Elon Musk wasn't ready for this. Your post changed everything. It began as an unexpected flicker, a late-night thought typed into the soft glow of your screen. Just a few words, more like a quiet murmur than a bold statement. The platform buzzed with endless chatter, a relentless digital torrent sweeping past. You never imagined your modest post would stir even a single ripple. You nearly closed the tab before hitting send, but you didn't. The words escaped into the void, igniting an unseen chain reaction. Little did you know that Elon Musk himself, perpetually immersed in headlines and the weight of consequence, would encounter it in the flow. And he wasn't prepared. You'd written about vulnerability, the chasm between aspiration and actuality. You intertwined tech and humanity, not in the slick veneer of a pitch deck, but with the gritty candor of lived experience. You shared a story of a friend who invested in a Tesla, lured by the promise of green energy, only to feel forsaken by sluggish service and persistent glitches. You likened it to factory workers murmuring fatigue behind gleaming stats. Then, in a twist you hadn't foreseen, you touched on Musk's cosmic dreams. If we neglect the earthly details, what claim do we have on Mars? It wasn't an assault. It wasn't crafted for virality. It was merely your distilled truth, carrying unintended heft. Musk read it once, then again, and it took root. He'd weathered praise, scorn, and ridicule countless times. But your phrasing breached his defenses. It didn't yell or flatter, it gazed straight at him, questioning if the emperor was clothed. The first tremor wasn't from Musk, but the echo, a retweet from a heavyweight, swelling your ripple into a tide. Engagement soared, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. People didn't just engage, they contributed tales of their own. Echoes of shattered promises, tempered hope, or sharpened fury. The thread morphed into a communal mirror, where strangers glimpsed their realities. Then, the unthinkable, Musk replied. Not with a quip, a meme, or his cryptic one-liners. He penned 3 full sentences, a rarity for him. He confessed he hadn't viewed the question that way. He yielded that earthly precision mattered as much as Martian vision. He closed with a raw, almost intimate note. Sometimes I forget to ground the dream in the soil beneath. Thanks for the reminder. Screenshots exploded across the web. Headlines blared it. Your post transcended itself, becoming a cultural pivot. Financial pundits debated its impact on Tesla's image, SpaceX's path, even Musk's legend. Podcasters parsed your words, your voice, your anonymity. Who was this anonymous soul who halted Musk? Who pierced the noise with an everyday whisper? But they missed the internal quake. Musk wasn't ready. For years, he'd thrived on relentless drive, always accelerating. Your words sowed doubt, and in him, doubt was cataclysmic. It prolonged his stares at conference tables, eyes narrowed not in resistance, but reflection. It spurred midnight calls to engineers, not for haste, but to inquire about their weariness. It revived his napkin sketches, not of new thrusters, but of worker support frameworks. He revisited your post repeatedly, as if decoding a revelation. Meanwhile, your world upended. Inboxes overflowed with messages. Reporters sought interviews. Strangers expressed gratitude for voicing the unspeakable. You recoiled at first, craving obscurity, but the tide pulled you along. In the digital era, influence isn't a chosen crown, it's an arriving tempest. Your words fueled a broader dialogue, one with the power to reshape narratives and choices. Ironically, you hadn't aimed to confront him. You'd only voiced your truth. Yet that's what resonated. Amid attention-grabbing clamor, unvarnished honesty cuts deepest. Musk, despite his bravado, remained human, susceptible to that wound. And in that fragility, he evolved, not instantly, not flawlessly, but visibly. As weeks unfolded, whispers spread, meetings felt transformed. Investors noted a newfound modesty in his earnings calls. Devotees, once staunch defenders, now championed accountability, citing his own words as proof that even Musk listened. Beneath the spectacle, intimacy bloomed. Musk contacted you privately, a terse, earnest message, "Want to talk, no cameras, just person to person." You wavered. Facing the colossus who'd shrunk in your eyes through his honesty felt unreal. But you consented. Over coffee in a secluded spot, evading lenses, the shift crystallized. He didn't defend, he questioned, pondered aloud if star-chasing had eclipsed the ground. What you shared was straightforward, no manifesto, no blueprint. Just your original essence. Dreams crumble if bearers break. Progress falters on neglect. The future measures not in launches or valuations, but in touched lives. And he absorbed it. Post-meeting, Musk resumed his whirlwind, yet subtleties emerged. He probed engineers about lives beyond deadlines. Memos acknowledged human limits beside tech targets. To insiders, it was profound. Those long muted now felt heard, their realities weighing alongside data. Your post's ripple swelled into a wave, eroding Musk's core approach. For the first time, you grasped words' raw power, not tweets, not PR, but your authentic, unpolished one slicing through myth and ego. It unnerved you. A simple message reaching Musk exposed how brittle global systems are to one sincere voice. Social media raged on. Experts scrutinized Musk's every move, Tesla tweaks, SpaceX updates, midnight posts, for your post's tremors. Some hailed the humility, others cried, virtue signaling. You observed from afar, dazed by your honesty unleashing such force, thrilling, draining, surreal. Then, the unforeseen, Musk wove your themes into public talks, subtly reflective. In a live employee Q&A, he stressed balancing drive with welfare. On a podcast, he discussed learning from critique, outsiders illuminating blind spots. Each utterance traced back to you, though anonymity veiled your role. Your post became lore. Private dialogues persisted. Musk craved beyond surface critique. Ordinary perspectives, night shift engineers, disillusioned buyers, questioning staff. He requested anecdotes, raw truths. You provided. He listened, internalized. Not passively, he adapted. Incremental shifts, schedules flexed for life, processes caught oversights, empathy infused comms. your life entangled further. Media beckoned, outlets, conferences, forums, to hear the Musk changer. You demurred, fearing Spotlight's distortion of authenticity. But you saw your duty, voice had unlocked a door. Now steward it. Musk urged discretion, valuing your insight sans glare. The dynamic defied logic, a billionaire mogul, space pioneer, discourse shaper, seeking an everyman's counsel. It revealed leadership's nuance, vision sans humility fractures, ambition sans awareness endangers, unchecked influence destroys. Amid gravity, levity surfaced. Private Musk unveiled dry wit, joking about your blindsiding post, how an outsider paused him. It humanized the giant, revealing shared doubts, insecurities, morals. Influence radiated wider. Policy talks shifted, tinted by accountability demands in labor, sustainability. Your words refracted voices, journalists, activists, policymakers, examining corporate/tech ambitions. Astonishing, a tiny act birthed vast reflection networks. Musk navigated evolution delicately, balancing vulnerability with myth. He wrestled expectations, legacy, icon status versus fallibility. Your post catalyzed. Change was his iterative toil, reflecting, confronting errors, daring new paths despite habits. You unearthed a truth: influence isn't fame, power, visibility, it's clarity, authenticity, courage to speak amid silence. Your post did more than halt Musk, it proved even untouchables yield to honesty, empathy, insight. Months on, the world assimilated changes from one post. Musk's empires transformed subtly, enduringly, reshaping cultures, priorities. Factories prioritized well-being. Launches factored human toil. Systems channeled feedback upward, amplifying unheard voices. For Musk, change ran deeper. Weekly reflections invited open talks on failures, frustrations, hopes. He listened, questioned to comprehend, not justify. Office walls, once blueprints and trophies, now people sketches, team notes, impact reminders. Privately, he confided, hardest task, not rockets, cars, satellites, but presence, humanity, responsibility. Your post confronted avoided truths. Vision sans consequence risks recklessness, genius sans empathy empties, power sans accountability burdens. He penned reflections, sharing as a man, not mogul, imperfections, betterment quests. Some posts went viral, others quietly inspired leaders emulating humility. Publicly, not all welcomed. Critics mocked introspection, claiming delusion. Fans reconciled visionary with ethical pauser. Slowly, a culture arose, from innovation worship to nuanced responsibility talks. You redefined influence. Overwhelming attention became a tool, duty. You spoke deliberately, shaping without deceit. Words moved mountains, firms, honesty wielded unexpected heft. Each Musk improvement, employee thanks, echoed your voice. Private talks matured to collaboration. He sought views on ethics, human-centric design, scaling empathy with tech, balancing ambition and responsibility, ensuring futures don't crush presents. Exchanges stayed candid, challenging, rooted in small truths catalyzing big shifts. Musk, once invincibility's epitome, now presence, accountability, adaptation. Unready for your post, he integrated critique into action, reflection into change. Myth endured, enriched by humanity, a lesson even icons learn, visionaries evolve. Ultimately, not about fame, wealth, virality. About truth's fragile power, one sincere voice-piercing armor, sparking reflection over complacency, altering lives, institutions. Musk changed forever, as did you. The world witnessed, knowingly or not, a subtle transformation wave, affirming small acts yield vast ripples. In your quiet moments, you knew this was just the start. Awakened influence uncontainable. Your post shifted a man, ignited generational change potential, a reminder no one, however mighty, escapes truth. The platform hummed with noise. Endless streams of chatter rushed by like a digital river. And you almost closed the window before pressing send, but you didn't. The words went out, and with them an invisible chain reaction began. There it was, your post. It looked unremarkable at first glance, but something in it compelled him to stop, to read again, to lean in as though the letters were alive. You wrote about fragility, about the gap between dream and reality. You wove technology and humanity together, not in the polished cadence of an investor pitch, but with the raw honesty of someone who had seen how promises land in real lives. You told a story about a friend who bought a Tesla, believing in the gospel of clean energy, only to feel abandoned when service was slow and issues lingered. You paired that with the stories of workers on factory floors, people who whispered exhaustion behind glossy statistics. And then you reached into the cosmos of ambition, conjuring a question Musk himself had spoken of in certain circles: if we can't fix the human details on Earth, what right do we have to claim Mars? It wasn't meant as an attack. It wasn't meant to go viral. It was simply what you felt, distilled into a form that happened to carry weight you hadn't anticipated. Musk read it once, twice, and the words carved through his usual defenses. It didn't shout at him. It didn't flatter him. It looked at him straight and asked whether the emperor still wore clothes. The first sign of change wasn't a message from Musk, but the echo. A retweet from someone big enough to turn a small ripple into a wave. The engagement counter climbed in real time. Hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. People weren't just liking it, they were adding their own stories. Some echoed your words with personal betrayals, others with cautious optimism, others with anger that sharpened like knives. The thread became a gathering place, a mirror in which thousands of strangers recognized pieces of their own reality. But what they didn't understand was what happened inside Musk himself. He wasn't ready for it. For years he had thrived on momentum, always pushing forward, always doubling down. That moment of honesty planted a seed of hesitation, and hesitation in someone like him is seismic. It made him sit longer at conference tables, eyes narrowed, not in defiance but in contemplation. It made him call engineers late at night, not to demand speed, but to ask about their exhaustion. It made him sketch on napkins again, not rockets, but diagrams of support systems for workers. And it made him scroll back to your post over and over as if rereading a prophecy. Meanwhile, your life changed in ways you could barely process. Messages flooded your inbox. Journalists asked for interviews. Strangers thanked you for saying what they couldn't. At first you resisted, wanting to shrink back into anonymity, but the current carried you whether you swam or not. In the digital age, influence isn't a crown you choose. It's a storm that arrives. Your words became part of a larger conversation, and that conversation could redirect not just narratives but decisions. The irony was that you hadn't set out to challenge him. You had only set out to tell the truth as you saw it. But perhaps that's why it worked. In a world of noise designed to capture attention, the unpolished truth is sometimes the sharpest blade. Musk, for all his bravado, was still human, still vulnerable to that cut. And in that vulnerability, he changed. Not all at once, not perfectly, but noticeably. As days turned into weeks, the world began to notice the shift, too. Employees whispered that internal meetings felt different. Investors remarked that his language on earnings calls carried a new humility. Fans who once defended every misstep with blind loyalty now joined in pushing for accountability because they could point to his own words. 3 sentences responding to you stood as evidence that even Musk listened. But beneath the public spectacle, something more intimate unfolded. Musk reached out to you directly. Would like to talk, no cameras, just person to person. You hesitated. The idea of sitting across from the man who had become larger than life was surreal. Yet you agreed. Over coffee in a quiet corner shielded from paparazzi, you realized the extent of the shift. He wasn't there to defend himself. He was there to ask questions, to listen, to wonder aloud whether he had been chasing stars so hard that he had forgotten the soil. What you told him wasn't complicated. It wasn't a manifesto or a blueprint. It was the same truth you had written: dreams mean nothing if the people carrying them are broken, progress collapses if built on neglect, the future isn't only measured in rockets and stock prices, but in the everyday lives touched along the way. Somehow, against all odds, he listened. In the days after your meeting, Musk's orbit began to shift. He asked engineers about their lives beyond deadlines, and his internal memos started to acknowledge human limits alongside technical goals. The change wasn't dramatic, not instantly visible to the public eye, but to those who worked with him, it felt seismic. People who had felt unheard suddenly realized that someone at the top was listening not just to numbers and projections but to their realities. Your post had created a ripple, and the ripple grew into a wave brushing against the core of how he approached the world. For the first time, you began to understand the strange power of words, not tweets, not press releases, not polished campaigns, but raw, unrefined honesty that could reach someone as distant as a trillion-dollar empire and bend it toward responsibility. And you feared the magnitude of that realization, because the more you understood how easily a single voice could shape a life and a company, the more fragile the global system seemed. The ripple expanded into public conversation. Analysts dissected every follow-up from Musk. Every internal shift at Tesla, every SpaceX announcement, Every late-night tweet was watched for signs that your post had caused a tremor. Some celebrated the humility, others accused him of virtue signaling. Yet the change was real enough that not even the most seasoned skeptics could deny it. The post became a legend in its own right, an unlikely catalyst that showed even the most untouchable figures could pause, listen, and change. Meanwhile, your life was braided into a public phenomenon you hadn't sought. Invitations from media outlets, tech forums, and conferences asked to meet the person who had altered a titan. You resisted at first, fearing that public exposure would distort the authenticity that gave the moment its power. But gradually you recognized that your role wasn't to stay hidden. Your voice had opened a door, and now it was up to you to walk through it with care. Musk, aware of your hesitation, requested discretion. He wanted your insights without the glare of publicity distorting them. The dynamic was unusual. A man who controlled billion-dollar companies seeking guidance from someone who had simply spoken the truth. In those conversations, you glimpsed the full complexity of leadership. Vision without humility is brittle. Ambition without awareness is dangerous. Influence without accountability is a liability. Your post had forced a reckoning, but the work of change was his to do. And then something unprecedented emerged. A new initiative. The focus wasn't on rockets, cars, or AI. It was an internal program centered on human well-being, fair labor practices, mental health support, better communication channels, and spaces for reflection across all levels of his companies. It wasn't revolutionary in innovation, it was radical in intention. Its traces were felt in every corner of the organizations, though the public might not see the connection. It stood as a testament to the reach of honesty. Musk, once defined by invincibility and unyielding momentum, had become defined by presence, accountability, and the courage to adapt. He had learned to translate critique into action, to temper ambition with responsibility. The myth remained, but it was enriched with a humanity previously absent. A reminder that even icons can learn, even visionaries can evolve, and that influence, if wielded with care, can shape not just a life but an entire culture. The world watched, some knowingly, some unknowingly, as a slow wave of transformation took shape. Not through flashy headlines, but through shifts in tone, in policies, in the everyday lives touched by the work. The seed of your single, honest post had become a catalyst for enduring change. It reminded everyone that influence isn't about fame or power or visibility. It is about clarity, authenticity, and the courage to speak when the world expects silence. Months passed, and the changes settled into a new normal. Musk's companies evolved with a quiet, stubborn steadiness, the hum of factories aligned with the well-being of people, schedules tuned to human need, and channels that heard voices from the bottom of the pyramid to the top. For Musk himself, the transformation was deeper than any rocket or record. He began weekly reflections, inviting engineers, designers, and employees to share failures, frustrations, and hopes. He listened without interruption, asking questions not to defend but to understand. The walls of his office, once a gallery of blueprints and accolades, now housed sketches of people, notes about teams, and reminders to consider impact beyond invention.